We're ready for Hillary. We know exactly what to expect. Hillary Clinton represents the failed policies of the past. Does America want a third Obama term? Or are we ready for strong conservative leadership to make America great again?
Hillary shocks the world. Marco takes on his former mentor in what may be an interesting battle to watch. And the man in charge of the biggest gun lobby in America snaps off what can only be viewed by many as a racist statement. We'll get to it all and more. Let's begin the second half of this arena. First up, veteran syndicated talker and Newsmax political analyst. Welcome back, Larry Elder. And she is senior political analyst of the Independent Women's Forum. Always a pleasure to welcome Hadley Heath Manning back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you.
Thank you
for having us.
Larry, I'm going to start with you on this one because Peter Morisi was just here in the first half of the arena, and he was totally unimpressed with the Republican response from people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and others after Hillary Clinton announced her candidacy. Many people think it was just a bad attack and badly done. What do you think?
Well, I think there's plenty of time to go after her. This is just the opening stages. I think it's too early to judge. The problem is, how do you go after her? Do you go after her based upon her lack of accomplishments? Do you attack her for whipping out the gender card and run the risk of being anti-women? She's a formidable candidate, very smart. She's been around for 30 some odd years. Lots of strength, lots of weaknesses. There's going to be plenty of time to attack her.
Hadley Heath, that's exactly what we brought up in the last arena, and that is that card about being a female that you know that the left is going to play. How does the GOP then, when and how do they get smart enough not to fall into what is going to be an obvious trap?
Well, we have seen Democrats actually overplay that gender card in the past. I live here in Denver, Colorado, and I believe that Mark Udall is no longer senator or is not our senator because he overplayed the gender card. And so certainly Democrats can run the risk of doing that. But I believe that in politics, like in anything else, the best defense is a good offense. And so Hillary's announcement, which was very positive and I think will appeal to a lot of women, especially center women when it comes to politics, Republicans also have to get ahead of that and paint their positive vision of where they will take the country because, of course, they have a great opportunity to differentiate their policy vision from that of the Obama years.
And don't they have to be certain in many ways that the Republicans do push forward that vision, Hadley Heath? Because I think Americans are sick and tired of the down in the mud. They know everything that's here. Wouldn't the Republicans be better off letting Benghazi, letting the email, letting the server gate happen, but drive home what they're going to do for this country that makes them better than Hillary Clinton?
Well, certainly, Mrs. Clinton's coming to this presidential race with not just one scandal, but unfortunately a list of scandals. And those things, in many ways, do speak for themselves. They do provide, I believe, ample opportunities for Republicans to go on the offensive in terms of attacking her record and her trustworthiness. But they cannot do that alone. They have to focus on the positive as well and really lead with a positive message, while those scandals and Mrs. Clinton's history certainly can speak for itself.
Larry, there's something we have to take into account here because the Clintons have been under the gun for a long time now, yet her numbers are still good. Granted, they may be falling in some places, but it seems as if much of America, those who would vote for Hillary Clinton, they don't care about Benghazi, Servergate, the Clinton Foundation. They will vote for her no matter what. That would seem to be something completely impossible for the GOP to go against. So what do they do then?
Well, you're absolutely right. She got a lot of equity built up in this country, especially among women. And she's going to run against a human being, either a male or a female. And that person's going to have strengths or weaknesses as well. He or she on the Republican side, as you pointed out, is going to have a positive agenda for how to move the country forward. It just can't be Hillary's a bad person, Hillary's an evil person, Hillary's got character flaws, all of which one can make an argument for. But that's not going to win the day. What's going to win the day is what's the economic agenda? Why has this recovery been so sluggish? What will this person on the Republican side do to make things better for the middle class?
20 seconds each before we take a break. First to you, Larry. Marco Rubio goes tonight. In your opinion, does he have any chance of defeating Hillary Clinton one-on-one?
Oh, of course he does. He's a young guy. He's got fresh face. On the other hand, he's a young guy with a fresh face, as was President Obama back in 2008. Yes, he's got a real good chance. If he's a nominee, I believe that Republicans will circle the wagons around him. Absolutely.
Hadley Heath?
I am not in the camp of Hillary cannot be beaten. I believe there are several candidates on the Republican side who could beat Hillary in the general, including Marco Rubio. She is part of the political establishment, and that is not in her favor.
But then again, let's also know that we're going to be talking about this for many months to come. That political establishment, for some reason or another, always seems to come up with the big numbers because that's always about money as well. Larry and Hadley Heath, if you would stand by just a couple of moments because we have to take a break. When we come back, the president meets with Raul Castro. And also, it's interesting when a leader of another country says to the president or about him, I respect you, but I don't trust you. It says an awful lot about what goes on in Latin America and the relations with the United States. We'll talk about that and so much more when we continue. Second half of The Arena right here on the Monday Midpoint.
So it is fair that I apologize to President Obama, but I am one of those who thinks, and I have told this to several heads of state and government that I see around this table now. I have told them in private meetings that I have had with them in my country. I have told them that, in my opinion, President Obama is an honest man.
All right, back to work in The Arena. Veteran syndicated talker, Newsmax political analyst Larry Elder, and senior political analyst, political analyst at the Independent Women's Forum, Hadley Heath Manning. It's okay, I can be given just one shot because it's Monday. We'll get the week off and rolling. All right, let's go ahead and start with a little President Obama then and some of the foreign policy here. Hadley Heath, I'll tell you, whether it's Raul Castro, whether it's Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, everybody's taking some shots at the president. It especially was interesting to hear Maduro say, I respect you, but I don't trust you, President Obama. What does this tell us then about the fact that we're now thinking about letting Cuba off the terror list, doing more business with them, and the fact that Venezuela, well, they back up a little bit, but they're still willing to push us just as hard as they can. Maybe they know they can push this president.
Well, we certainly don't want the perception of the United States around the world, whether it's our allies or our enemies, to be that of a weak United States. And I have to wonder if this is perhaps the leader of Venezuela's way of saying that she respects, or he respects, the office of the President of the United States and understands that's a very powerful office in the world. But personally, the relationship that he has with President Obama is not a positive one, because rather than distrusting, his character, President Obama's character, this is a statement about his ability to make good on promises that not only he's making to the rest of the world, or red lines that he might have drawn in his foreign policy stances, but also in his ability, I believe, to deliver on promises he's made to the American people. So I think it's fair for other governments to say that the president has not always kept his word.
What about that removal, Hadley Heath, of Cuba as being a state that promotes terrorism? There's only 4 in the world. Cuba's one. Many people would say they haven't done anything to prove to us they're any better than they were 20 years ago. Some would say, come on, time to forgive, forget, and move on. Where do we go?
Well, this is a very complex situation with Cuba, and certainly I think there's arguments to be made that if we look back at our policy towards Cuba with an embargo, with very tough economic sanctions, we have to ask, what was the policy end that we were hoping for? We were hoping for better human rights in Cuba. We were hoping for capitalism for the Cuban economy. We haven't seen a lot of those things. We haven't met a lot of those goals. So is it time to look back and revise our foreign policy towards Cuba? I believe yes, and I believe we should pursue free trade where we can. But on the other hand, we have to call terror what it is, and we don't simply reclassify things because it's more convenient for us from an economic perspective.
Larry, there's a lot of people who say that Cuba doesn't export terror anymore simply because they can't afford it.
Well, I think the problem is that this president has created a perception in the minds of both friends and enemies that he can be rolled. We had this bad Bo Bergdahl deal. We've got the Iran deal, where the Iranians now tell us that they want the sanctions removed right away. And when Obama made his first overtures towards Cuba, they were going to release a bunch of political prisoners. They've not done it. So the impression is that Obama wants the deal by any means necessary. It doesn't matter if America looks weak. It doesn't even matter if it advances America's best interest. It'll give Obama another legacy.
But what about those, Larry, who say that it hasn't done any good to this point? I will tell you, I have a lot of younger friends of mine who are Latin American descent, and even they say, it's enough. It hasn't worked in 30 or 40 years. Let's move on, and let's at least try to exert some positive influence on the country now instead of just holding them out as pariahs.
Well, define work. If the objective is to reward Cuba, it seems to me Cuba should be doing something in terms of advancing human rights. But they've not done it. The journalists and others that they've arrested are still behind bars. As far as I'm concerned, Obama has given them an olive branch, and we've gotten nothing in return.
15 seconds to you, Hadley Heath. There's the other side of that argument. They say that Cuba's human rights have not improved at all since the Castro Revolution.
Right, and so is that an argument to continue the same policies that we've had in place, or is that an argument for revisiting those policies and looking for something else that might work differently? Look, sanctions are an important part of foreign policy, but we have to be sure we're working towards the end that we have in mind.
I think that's probably the best way to put it. We have to have an end game, but then again, if you look at this administration and so many others before it, end games have certainly never been our real strong suit. We've seen that a number of places. Larry Elder and Hadley Heath Manning, please stand by just a couple of moments, because when we do come back, what Wayne LaPierre said at the NRA meeting last week could indeed be more than just borderline racist. Next on The Arena.
He intends to go out with a coronation of Hillary Rodham Clinton. Yeah. I have to tell you, 8 years of one demographically symbolic president is enough.
There it is. Here we go. Last shot in the arena for this pair. Veteran syndicated talker, Newsmax political analyst, Larry Elder, senior political analyst for the Independent Women's Forum, Hadley Heath Manning. Hadley Heath, I'm going to begin with you on this one. 8 years of one demographically symbolic president is enough from Wayne LaPierre. And people, some people indeed, up in arms. They said that takes a shot at blacks, women, Latinos, anybody who's not white and right. What do you think?
You know, I think one of the reasons that those comments are so offensive to some is because they boil down to identity politics. And usually it's the left that is guilty of identity politics, of boiling people down, reducing people to pure tokens. And of course, the election of our first African-American president was significant in and of itself because of what it says about our country. Of course, I disagree with the president's policies. I think a lot of his critics are on very solid ground criticizing his policies, and it has nothing to do with his race. But when we start to talk about demographics and we start to talk about their impact on American politics, we are engaging in that game of identity politics. We don't want to do that. We want to stay away from that and say that every individual, regardless of their skin color, their gender, their background, their sexual orientation, those people have characteristics that make them a good leader or not a good leader, a good policy vision or not a good policy vision for our country. So, of course, reducing people to tokens is not the way we want to go.
Larry Elder, your call.
I didn't find his comment problematic in the least. What Wayne LaPierre simply said is that a lot of people voted for Barack Obama in 2008 because he's black and voted for him again in 2012 because he's black, not because he did a good job. I saw a bumper sticker once that said, I voted for Obama in 2008 to show I wasn't racist. I voted against him in 2012 to show I wasn't a fool. That's all Wayne LaPierre is saying. Don't vote for somebody just because they're the first black, first woman, first whatever. Vote for somebody because they're the most qualified person for the job. And in his view, Obama is not that person. So I found absolutely no problem whatsoever with what LaPierre said. Nothing.
All right, second piece. Australia has decided that they're going to cut welfare benefits for parents who refuse to vaccinate their children starting in January 2016. No jab, no pay. That's it. Larry, I'm one of these guys who is very harsh on this. These anti-vaxxers bother the living daylights out of me. They help to spread diseases. It's unnecessary. I think it's a great idea.
I'm with you. Children don't have a say in this. It's one thing to deny stuff for yourself if you're an adult. It's another thing to deny vaccines that can help a child. That's cruel. That's absolutely cruel, in my opinion.
All right, Hadley Heath.
I'd be interested to know, from a means-tested perspective, I imagine these subsidies that are being withheld for childcare mainly affect Australians who are of lower incomes in that lower income bracket. But then I live, as I said, in Colorado, which is one of the states that struggles with this anti-vaccine lobby that's just based on terrible, terrible junk science. There are people who are very well-to-do, well-off people who don't depend on subsidies for childcare, who also need to be educated about how important it is to vaccinate their children. So I think this is a message not just for people who rely on government subsidies, but this is something that everyone across the income scale really needs to understand, that vaccinating your children is a safe and effective way to keep them healthy.
I was going to bring that up too, because in California, most of the people who are refusing to vaccinate their children are actually very well off living in Southern California, and they've got more than enough money to do it. And quite frankly, when we see a lot of kids come over from Latin America, they are already vaccinated against many of these diseases, and they're very poor simply because they listen, they get it done, the government hands it out. It's just a little ridiculous here. Very, very quickly, 15 seconds apiece. Larry, Pope Francis calls the Armenian slaughter the first genocide of the 20th century. The Turks are upset. Do you think he was right in making the statement?
I do think he was right. The Turks are going to be upset because if you call this a genocide, the next step is reparations, and the Turks, of course, don't want to do that.
There you go. To you, Hadley Heath.
I think this also reminds us that we need to be very aware of the persecution of people groups and specifically Christians in other parts of the world, even now today in 2015. So this is definitely something that we ought to pay attention to. This was a commemoration of something that happened long ago, but sadly, even today, this type of persecution persists.
Well done indeed. Larry Elder and Hadley Heath Manning, always a pleasure to talk to you both. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Third and final Monday 60 Minutes on MidPoint set to begin. They are the newest to enter the presidential fray, but what does Marco Rubio and Hillary Clinton really know about foreign policy, and should we trust them with it? It's next on MidPoint.